Welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, discussing all the latest in Philadelphia sports. Is it just me, or is it whenever this Eagles team in recent memory is faced with a must-win situation, it curls up and fails? That's what this loss in Philadelphia felt like this past Monday night on Monday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers, where the Eagles were riding this undefeated home game winning streak. They were allowing 9 points per game on the season at home, and they just come up drastically short against the Green Bay Packers team that just controlled the football, Aaron Rodgers picking apart the defense. And now, after what was a 3-0 start on the season for the Philadelphia Eagles and what looked to be like a playoff season, mind you, has turned into a 2-6 stretch over the last 8 games. And now what initially looked like perhaps a playoff season has vanished.
And now, here's Tyler Werner.
And yes, say it ain't so, but it looks like the Eagles may not go to the 2016 NFL playoffs at this point. So I attempt some on-the-fly poetry here, and mind you, because what do we have? I don't have anything better to do right now than to break this game down against the Eagles and the Packers. A game that was a must-win for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, we were all saying it all week. Maybe even the last 2 weeks. The Eagles were going to go to Seattle. They were going to lose like we thought they would. But they bounced back the next week at home, where the Eagles have been stout all season long, especially on defense. And they were going to beat the Green Bay Packers, and they were very much so going to be in the wild card race for the 6th seed. Because, I mean, let's face it, at this point now, the Giants are, 8-3. And, I mean, really, they just need to put 2 more wins on the board, and they've, in my eyes, they've locked up a spot. So they got to win 2 of out of their next 5 games, and they're in no matter what. And meanwhile, the Eagles, they had a chance by beating the Green Bay Packers. Look, we saw the Redskins lose to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That's where the Eagles. This is where the Eagles had to come in to Philadelphia, beat the Green Bay Packers at home. A Green Bay Packers team that has been struggling, that had lost 4 straight heading into this game, despite Aaron Rodgers playing well. This is a Packers team that has had no defense. They were allowing 40-plus points in back-to-back games. And this Eagles team puts up a measly 13 points.
Come on, that's terrible!
It is terrible. It is terrible. And again, this is a game where Doug Peterson kind of looked terrible. And just right off the bat, I know one of the lead stories heading into this game was the Nelson Aguilar situation. Would he play? And I'm just like, look, at this point, let's get this out of the way. Just kind of the bridge off of last week. I don't have time. We don't have time in the NFL. I mean, maybe some people do, apparently. When you're selected number 20 overall as a wide receiver, I don't have time for this, he's in a slump and yada yada, and maybe he just needs a sports psychologist and then he'll come back and he'll be really good. Like, besides maybe the occasional deep reception touchdown against the Cleveland Browns, what has Nelson Aguilar shown? Where it's like, maybe he's just in a slump, and he's a mediocre receiver, if that. And what is he gonna come? And then he's gonna come out of and instead of being a bad receiver, he's gonna be a mediocre receiver again, anyways. Like, what are we talking about here? He was selected not too far behind Amari Cooper and Mike Evans and Sammy Watkins. All right? Those guys were selected ahead of him in that draft. But look at the disparity between him and those guys, especially Amari Cooper. All right? So, what? Here in Philadelphia, we get the guy that, I don't know, is quote-unquote soft, if that's the word. I mean, come on. I don't have time for that. So, I don't care that he was sitting on the sidelines not playing all this game. Like, to me, that situation's just frustrating. So they had out there Dorial Green-Beckham. He had a great first drive. But these fundamental errors, like last week it was especially Nelson Aguilar, all right, we saw that. But Dorial Green-Beckham, like, this whole thing, when they're not running the ball, he's got to stop blocking. These are fundamental errors that it's like he's not learning from. It cost him before, and now it cost him again in this game. Like, at least, I know at least he seemed to use his body a little more. He hauled in some catches, but then again, this Green Bay Packers defense has been terrible, so that's not saying much. But still, these fundamental errors on offense, they gotta stop. And it starts with coaching, for one thing. But when you have mediocrity out there at wide receiver, if that, at times, it's like, where do you go? Where do you go offensively? The Packers, they were offensively... they didn't run the ball well. Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers did in the first half.
5 letters here.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers was killing... He was killing the Eagles' defense. Rolling out of the pocket and running for first downs. I mean, a dual threat right there. And I was kind of... I mean, I gotta admit, I was pleased to see Carson Wentz use his legs a little bit. I know he might have taken a couple of hits and whatnot, but I maybe get him to slide a little more. I don't know, but he went balls to the wall, I guess, if you could say, on that touchdown run by him at the 1-yard line. It looked like a busted play, and he kind of did like this Superman dive. He kept his knees off the ground and got the ball crossing the plane. That was nice. And he had a couple runs. He juked a couple guys out, and he had a couple nice runs this game. I was kind of pleased to see that, because it's like, where was he going with the football? Like, where was he going to go at times in this game? Even though this is a defense that everybody else has been shredding as of late. Unfortunately, the Eagles were failing to do that. That's not good. I know, look, this Aaron Rodgers. I mean, say what you want about the Packers in their previous 4 games, but Aaron Rodgers has still been pretty sharp, all right? They've been moving the ball down the field. They've been passing, but the problem is their defense has been atrocious. And the fact that here at home, the Eagles could not take advantage of that and only put up 13 points, that's atrocious. And whether or not Nelson Aguilar was in there or not, that to me is poppycock. That has no bearing whatsoever on whether they're going to score more points or not. I know Ryan Matthews, he was playing pretty well before they lost him. And Sproles was maybe not at full strength, although he looked pretty good in doing some screenplays late in the game. It was just too little, too late. Wendell Smallwood was supposed to be the guy this game. He was supposed to be, carrying the load at running back. But the problem was they didn't really have many opportunities to run the football. The defense was getting picked apart surgically. All right? The Packers, I mean, they weren't like in the blink of an eye going up and down the field either. That's the thing. They were going down and they were getting touchdowns and scoring, but they were doing it methodically. They were chewing up time. They were controlling the clock while controlling the score. I mean, they go down, they have these long drives, nickel and diming the Eagles, and at times burning them deep, somewhat. And on third down, and sometimes fourth down, when the Eagles needed to stop, Aaron Rodgers rolls out of the pocket, he runs for a first down, or he makes a play on the move, throwing the ball, and it just continued to kill the Eagles' defense. And without going any further, Fletcher Cox, where you at, brother? Where you at? I mean, come on. This has been a disappointing season for Fletcher Cox. The Eagles at home and overall, their defense is known for being pretty good. All right, and I guess at least point-wise, this was nothing out of the norm as far as how many points they allowed. However, the way they got, again, surgically picked apart over time was the main issue here of concern. They just got picked apart, and they couldn't get to the quarterback. They couldn't get Aaron Rodgers. No sacks. And Fletcher Cox, one tackle all game. One tackle. And next to Benny Logan, no tackles. I mean, this, again, it's like one of these things, like Fletcher Cox, he gets his big payday, and he hasn't really shown up a whole lot this year. This is supposed to be, all-pro, one of the very best at his position. And he has one assisted tackle all game long. That's just disappointing. Very disappointing. And then, of course, yet again, I know it was borderline, should not have been called, but a roughing the passer penalty. Some of them have been on, there's been a couple that have been uncalled for. This one, maybe a little more, I don't know if it should have been called or not. But still, the underlying theme here is Fletcher Cox has not been making the kind of noise that you need him to make this season. The fact that they could not get to Aaron Rodgers, it just led to more problems. This secondary was exposed. All right? They were absolutely exposed. And again, I don't want to mix names up here. But you got Jalen Mills and Jalen Watkins. But I mean, come on. These guys, I mean, last week, what did we see? Jalen Watkins. Absolutely piss poor tackling. And just, they were not looking, like, so many occasions, they're not looking back at the ball. This was on a couple occasions. Nolan Carroll was guilty of this too. Where it's like the ball, like they're covering him properly. They're right there, but they don't look back to the ball. And the ball, like, miraculously goes through their hands, and it's caught for a touchdown or for a big gain. I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes. And I'm sure many others watching who saw the same plays couldn't believe their eyes. I mean, this reminds me of Bradley Fletcher stuff here. I mean, the one play, I think it was Nolan Carroll. I mean, as he's turning to look back at the ball, as if it was still in the air, Jordy Nelson or Devontae Adams, whoever it was literally hauling it in as he's turning to look back for the ball. It's like, you're way too late, my friend. Way too late. I mean, it was just... Again, it was... Aaron Rodgers... I mean, what more can you say? Other than... I mean, this is one of those things, you know... The Packers, their back was against the wall. I know. But their defense... The fact that this Eagles offense, and defensively at home, they got picked apart and were disappointed. Could not get to Aaron Rodgers, really. Could not sack him. And then, coupled with the fact that on offense, the Eagles just came out flat for the most part. They started off with a bang, looking pretty good. But the fact that they could not take advantage of this Packers defense at home here for the Philadelphia Eagles is just alarming. It is. I mean, it's just... I know they're shallow at wide receiver. I know running back... I mean, then again, I mean... They fell behind fairly quickly. And they were battling against the clock, especially when the Packers just continued to move the ball and keep the Eagles' offense off the field. But the fact that the Eagles, they just could not respond on offense after the early going is just immensely disappointing. You know, Carson Wentz... I don't know, he kind of had another outing that kind of raises mixed feelings, I guess. Like, I was glad to see him on the move, like, making some plays, but again, it's like he sailed one, and it got intercepted. It was kind of in double coverage, too, Zach Ertz. You know, he kind of sailed one, and you know, I mean, other than that, he wasn't too shabby, but I don't know. Just no. I mean, he ran for a touchdown, but no pass touchdowns. Once again, it's like it just continues to be a head scratcher at wide receiving, and sometimes tight end. Like, you know, where do they go with the football here right now? But they got what they got right now. And, you know, Paul Turner, I guess, was activated, and people were looking forward to seeing him, you know, without Nelson Aguilar being dressed to play. But he didn't do anything. And then, I mean, other than that, I mean, outside that first drive where Dorial Green-Beckham caught several balls, after that he wasn't able to do anything. Jordan Matthews, you know, he caught a few passes for 47 yards, but other than that, I mean, there's nothing here that shows that the Eagles had a formidable, you know, game plan here. I was disappointed to see, well, the way they got Sproles going late in the game with this, like, I don't know if they were just a little hesitant, you know, with the cracked rib and the Kevlar vest that Sproles had on, but towards later on in the game, you know, Sproles was starting to show some flashes on those screenplays. It's like maybe they could have used this earlier. But they didn't really do that until later in the game. Smallwood, again, he was the guy that the Eagles were kind of counting on here to, at least heading into the game, that we thought, could get, maybe around 20 carries. He could be the go-to running back here this game without Ryan Matthews and with maybe being cautious with Darren Sproles. And he only got 9 carries, 37 yards, a mediocre outing, I guess. But unfortunately, again, it's like it's hard to run the ball, as much as you'd like when it's you're getting killed defensively and you're battling against time. And speaking against battling against time, well, it's time for the first break here in the Tyler Werner Show. Thank you. But anyways, we'll come back. We'll discuss this more. We'll try to look. Playoff hopes are slim to none right now because the Eagles are a game and a half behind the Redskins. Look, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. The Eagles, to keep the season alive, even though the playoff hopes are on life support right now, they got to beat a Bengals team that's really, they've been terrible as of late, okay? They've been bad. And they don't have, no AJ Green, and, come on. This is, whether it's on the road or at home, I don't care. This is a team you got to beat. And then they got revenge division games, to come, and so and see what the Redskins do. Look, I'm not counting on playoffs at this point, but it's still somewhat in the discussion. If the Eagles are able to win this week, which they should, and if they rebound like they're expected to and should against their division opponents in the Washington Redskins and the Giants. So we'll look ahead once again, even though things look a little more bleak right now. And maybe, I don't know what can happen, but it's not looking good. That's the point here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the other side right here on the Tyler Werner Show.
I'll have some skirt steak, some brisket, little piece of that New York steak, a couple of them steak fingers, and a burger.
You've known for a long time that you were going to have to get real about fat or stay real fat. It didn't get that way by accident or by some outsider's doing.
Put some macaroni and cheese on there, too. Is there any chicken fried steak left?
Your weight just keeps creeping up or maybe even shooting sky high.
3 slices of pecan pie and 2 cups of coffee.
You have a decision to make. You know it, and so do I.
Yes, all right.
You need prescription diet pills or other diet aids to lose weight.
Attention parents. Is your under 18-year-old daughter being cyberstalked by a man who identifies themselves as a grown adult male?
I want to meet you and fool around. Are you up to meeting tonight, hon? I think I would like to shower with you. We can do it in the shower, too.
If so, you need to contact Chris Hansen and Company to bust these online cyberstalkers.
How are you tonight? Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable for that?
I guess you're going to tell me next that this is the very first time you've done something like this.
Chris Hansen and the Dateline crew will take care of it. Contact us, and we will put an end to the cyber stalking that your daughter is experiencing.
Well, there's something you got to know. I am Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer predators.
Busted!
The champion of game day catering is the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show, Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs.
We prepare our balls over time, and that's the essence of the preparation.
On top of that, another trademark of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs is Brady's signature rubbing process.
When I pick balls out, to me, they're perfect. I don't want anyone touching the balls after that. I don't want anyone rubbing them. To me, those balls are perfect. What is a concern is the texture of the balls, and again, that's the point that Tom hit on hard.
The champion of all game day catering dishes is Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show.
We're back on the Tyler Werner Show on this, last day here of November, the month of November. Hard to believe we're already moving into December and getting down to the wire here in the 2016 NFL season. Now tonight, we were supposed to have a Philadelphia Sixers game. And as many of you may know at this point, the game was canceled. Well, not canceled, but postponed.
What?
Yes. Supposedly, here's what happened. The 76ers announced that the November 30th game against the Sacramento Kings was postponed due to an issue with the surface of the court and with player safety in mind. Arena officials worked diligently to address the issue, but NBA officials determined that the court was not suitable for play. And tickets will be honored when the game is rescheduled later this season. Parking receipts for the game will be honored at the rescheduled game as well. And fans who purchase tickets for the game will have the opportunity to receive complimentary tickets to a couple of other games that they have options for. So apparently the MVP of the night's game is apparently the broomstick, because there was no game. There was no game. I don't know what the issue was with the floor. That was the 76ers statement, though, the essence. And I'm curious to I guess to see what was wrong with the floor that made it unplayable. And of course, in Flyers action, Tuesday night, shootout win against the Boston Bruins. A game where the Flyers got outshot 47-21. And yet, in the shootout, the Flyers take it. Steve Mason, standing on his head pretty well to save 45 of the 47 shots. And then in the shootout, the Flyers come up big and win. And for maybe one of the few times this season, get back-to-back wins after beating the Calgary Flames 5-3 on Sunday night as well. So the Flyers putting a couple wins together. They've been, kind of win-loss a lot this season. It's been very rare, if at all, that they've won back-to-back games. But nevertheless, they just did so. So, I don't know. And then they got the Flyers. They got the Flyers have the Senators coming up Thursday, 7:30 game. So we'll see how things pan out for the Flyers. See if they can maybe start to put together a bit of a winning streak here. I don't know. I don't know if I'd have faith in that happening quite yet, but nevertheless, the Flyers putting a couple back-to-back wins together. So we've been talking, obviously, this Eagles loss to the Packers. And, it's kind of one of those, where do you, start with the mistakes this game, with, the Dorial Green-Beckham blocking when the ball is not thrown yet and getting a flag, and the Brandon Graham offsides penalty, and another botched snap by Jason Kelce. Fletcher Cox roughing the pass penalty, and Doug Peterson challenging basically for 2 yards, what would be a 2nd and 8 or instead a 2nd and 10, and it's just like maybe save it for perhaps a more important challenge, something that's more worth challenging later in the game. Maybe you save it, but I don't know. It was one of those games. Once again, it was not Doug Peterson's finest hour. It wasn't Fletcher Cox's finest hour yet again. It just, once again, wasn't Jason Kelsey's finest hour. Or the whole offensive line, for that matter. They looked a little lost this game. I mean, there are times Carson Wentz is looking to roll out. He knows the pressure's coming. He's got 2 guys coming at him, just smothering him and nowhere to go. I mean, this game, again, it was surgical what Aaron Rodgers did on offense, and just they controlled they controlled the score, they controlled the clock. They were, drive after drive, it seemed, with 10 plays or more, first down after first down. And the Eagles, they didn't really have an answer for it. And very disappointingly so, the Eagles didn't have an answer on offense. I don't know what else to say. I mean, other than I don't know. They responded early on when the Packers scored, but then after that, they were held to 6 points, the 2 field goals the rest of the game. I mean, you can't play like that against Aaron Rodgers and expect to keep up, to keep pace, even though they had every opportunity to get something going on offense. They didn't. And it was very disappointing to watch. So now, where do the Eagles go from here? That's the question. The Eagles have the Cincinnati Bengals next in Cincinnati. If there's any hope for a playoff berth, the wild card race, the Giants, they got the 5th seed. Let's just, I guess, kind of confirm that if we can. They're 8-3. They've been pretty good lately. I mean, they haven't really lost a game. They may have lost 1 game since September even. They've been rolling. So they're 8-3. The Cowboys, they won the division, but the Giants are 8-3. They get the 5th seed. The Redskins 6-4-1 right now. The Eagles 5-6. There's an outside chance that 9-7 would get them a wild card spot, but that means the Eagles can only lose 1 more game. And seeing as how they've been 2-6 their last 8 after that 3-0 start, that made it look like a playoff year, no question. Well, I guess maybe not no question, but the way they won those games, it certainly was looking as so. The Eagles, they should beat the Bengals. If they don't beat the Bengals, then it's over. Season over. They got to beat the Redskins. That's a must-win. You could argue that almost every game's a must-win from here on out. But for the sake of arguing, not arguing, but the sake of argument, since the Redskins lost this past week, the Eagles, they have an opportunity, an outside chance to get that 6th seed. So let's say they win the next 2 games. At the Ravens, loss. Giants coming to the Eagles. Revenge situation for the Eagles. Eagles get a win. And then the Cowboys, at this point may not have anything to play for after Seattle lost. So that week, I mean, the Cowboys may already have home field advantage locked up. It almost looks more likely than it did last week, even after, because the Seahawks lost to the Buccaneers. A clunker on the road, a typical, Seattle clunker, where they only mustered up 5 points. But anyhow, so, I mean, it's certainly asking a lot for the Eagles to win 4 out of 5 here remaining, especially when, once again, 2-6. I mean, the last 8 games. But that's what it takes. I mean, there's no way they win 5 straight and finish 10-6. They need help. They're gonna need help from the Redskins. So with that in mind, let's go to the Redskins schedule, because the Vikings lost once again. They're 6-5, I believe now. Yes, they're 6-5, but still they're a bit on edge, or on the edge, I should say. Green Bay, considering the fact that they won, they have an outside chance at making the playoffs. Now, if they kind of fall apart again, I mean, that could very well happen. They say they lose 2 more games, they're 8-8, they're out of it. Although their schedule's a little more favorable down the stretch here, so I don't know if we want to count on that, but basically they can't lose 2 more games. But hey, if we're asking the Eagles to go 4-1, the Packers can go 4-1 too, so who knows. Vikings, they're kind of on the downward spiral. They had a chance to win against the Lions, so that didn't happen. So in the Eagles, they do have a head-to-head win over them. So even if the Vikings finish 9-7, I don't believe that the Eagles, I guess, would get the nod there if that happened to be the case, and if that would be also if the Redskins finish worse. So let's see how that could happen. The Redskins at the Cardinals. This might be a tough game for the Redskins. It's definitely a game that's losable for them against a Cardinals team that needs all the help they can. They can't, they're coming off a bye. It's in Arizona. They can't lose from here on out. So I don't know. But then the Redskins at the Eagles after that, must win for the Eagles. The Panthers at the Redskins after that. I mean, that might not be a walk in the park for the Redskins, but it's winnable for them. Redskins at the Bears, Giants at the Redskins, last game of the season. Redskins stand at 6-4-1. If they go 2-3 here, they finish 8-7-1. The Eagles finish 9-7, then the 9-7 would get them in because of the tie. That would obviously, edge the Redskins out there. That's the only scenario I can see. They'd have to lose against the Cardinals, lose against the Eagles, and lose against the Giants last game of the year. Now, I don't know. They could always beat the Cardinals this week, lose to the Eagles, maybe have a clunker against the Panthers, but I wouldn't bet on that. So, or even a clunker against the Bears, but that's, in my eyes, that's not going to happen.
I agree.
All right. So that's basically what we're looking at. And again, the Eagles would have to finish 4-1. I repeat, 4-1. And in the process of beating the Redskins would also have to finish 2-3 for this to take place, for the Eagles to get that wild card spot. And meanwhile, they'd have to hope that the Packers, don't finish 4-1 and have the tiebreaker over the Eagles or whatever. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at, folks. And to me, it's really it's an outside chance. Now that the Eagles, essentially, they can't finish. There's no way they're finishing 10-6. And again, 9-7's a stretch now, even. So with that in mind, I mean, we're counting on the Eagles to finish 4-1, which I don't see happening, to finish 9-7. They got to finish 4-1 to finish 9-7, and again, hope that the Redskins don't finish 9-6-1. So that's what we're looking at, folks. It's not looking too good. All right, now as we always do, right here in the Tyler Werner Show, during the NFL season, we take a look around the rest of the NFL outside of what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles with our top 5 thoughts of the week in the NFL. And this is now week 12 edition of that. Hard to believe. 12 weeks. Where is the time going? As Christmas is rapidly approaching. Alright, so here we go. Thought number 5. The Oakland Raiders win once again. They moved to 9-2. After they beat the Carolina Panthers 35-32. In the process, at one point of the game, for those who saw, Derek Carr kind of dislocates his pinky, I guess off his, his center's butt or whatever, hamstring area, whatever you want to. Kind of an awkward dislocation there, and then it gets bent back into place. On the sideline, he just comes right off. As the play, he knew something was wrong with it, and he just goes off, and he gets his pinky finger then relocated, if we can use that term.
Oh my God!
And it was quite something. But it seems like he's going to be all right. And I'll tell you what, the Raiders, they're looking all right. They're looking like they could give the Patriots a run for their money this season in the playoffs. But I don't know. I guess maybe Brady and Belichick may have something to say about that. We'll see. All right, thought number 4: the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Indianapolis Colts 28-7 on Thanksgiving night. Get a much-needed win. Basically to stay alive in their division race, because there's no wild card coming out of that division. So, now, albeit this was a Colts team, Andrew Luck was out, hurt. It's Scott Tolzien in there, but nevertheless, I mean, it's an important win for the Steelers on Thanksgiving night, and the Steelers they need all the wins they can get right now. Number 3, the Detroit Lions once again beat the Minnesota Vikings in a close game, 16-13 on Thanksgiving afternoon here on the East Coast, that is. And they now have a stronghold on the division over the Vikings, who are the next closest, opponent record-wise, who are now 6-5. Lions move it to 7-4. And they beat the Vikings. They swept the Vikings both games. So that is a major advantage for the Lions right now as we get down, we head down the stretch here in the playoff race. Thought number 2. None other than the Dallas Cowboys winning their 10th straight game after they beat the Washington Redskins on Thanksgiving 31-26. And, I mean, what else can you say other than, you know, home field advantage for the Dallas Cowboys? I mean, right now they got a 2.5 game cushion as far as that's concerned. You know, they put up a few more wins and they very well clinch home field advantage. I mean, we'll see what the Seahawks do, but they could have that sucker clinched with 2 weeks to spare, for crying out loud. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but it's looking like that's the direction it's heading. More so than ever. And finally, thought number 1. The Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid.
People, they
They beat the Broncos in overtime, 30-27. And they move ahead of them, at least in the division. And they're now 8-3. Broncos fall to 7-4, but can still be a wild card team. As them and the Dolphins right now are both 7-4. Raiders leading that division 9-2. But the Chiefs are right there. And they're looking like a wild card team. You know, even if the Raiders do win that division, looking like the 5th seed there in the AFC. It's not bad. Impressive showing for the Kansas City Chiefs, beating the Broncos in overtime.
Time's yours.
And speaking of time, that's all the time we have for the top 5 thoughts around the NFL. Of course, Week 12 edition. And yes, we are coming down to the wire here in the NFL season. Again, I just kind of laid it out. What has to happen? What can realistically happen? Because again, there's no way there's a 5-0 finish out of this Eagles team. We've already determined that. And furthermore, even 4-1 is really asking a lot out of this Eagles team. So again, just for the sake of let's look at the standings in the NFC, just to kind of, you know, is there anybody else in the picture that I'm leaving out unfairly? Again, the Cardinals, they're 4-6-1. I mean, what chance do they really have? The whoa! I didn't realize that suddenly, ladies and gentlemen, the Buccaneers, they're 6-5. I wasn't aware. A little bit of like breaking news there. I didn't realize the Buccaneers had won 3 straight until looking at they just beat the Seahawks though, so they're creeping in the mix a little bit. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting to note because, all right, the Redskins are 6-4, but actually, now the Buccaneers, you got to worry about them in the picture. See, this is one of those, like, a couple weeks ago, they were 4-5, and it's like, yeah. So, weren't fearing them too much. But they got a legitimate chance now. 9-7 can, as I've laid it out, 9-7 may very well get that last wild card spot. So, what we're looking at, you know what? Let's look at the Buccaneers' schedule. The Saints going to Tampa Bay this week. Now, I'm not sure who won the first match. Oh, never mind. They haven't played each other yet. They play each other 2 times in a 3-game span. So that might be, let's say they split those. I just lost the schedule here for the Tampa Bay. Let's say they split those, alright? And that would put the Buccaneers, well, in between those games. So they win the first one, 7-5. Then they're at the Cowboys the next week. Probably a loss for the Buccaneers. So 7-6. Saints at home then, revenge situation, 7-7. And then the Buccaneers. Wait, why am I missing one? I'm sorry. I made it. Whoops. Before any of these games I've just mentioned, this Sunday they have the Buccaneers. They're at the Chargers. That's a winnable game. I'll probably give them the win there. And then, alright, so now this totally screwed things up here. Then
It's like you got a problem with concentration.
Yeah, let me concentrate a little more here. Alright, so they're 6-5. They beat the Chargers 7-5. Beat the Saints when they host them first. 8-5 at the Cowboys. 8-6. Lost there. At the Saints, 8-7. They lose to there. And then the Panthers at the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers may finish 9-7 by the looks of it. They finished 3-2 maybe. This Chargers game is huge at San Diego. It's a swing game. But you know what? They've won 3 straight. They just beat the Seahawks. So, I don't know. This is a big swing game here for the I could go either way on that game. But they could very well finish 9-7. And then you're talking, I guess conference records and common opponents, I guess, comes before conference record, because this is a team that the Eagles will not have played this season. And speaking of common opponents, well, they just beat the Seahawks and have to see who else they beat, but that's not a good sign right off the bat. Alright, so the Buccaneers have crept into the mix. Let me just go to the Vikings again. Because they're not, obviously they're on the downfall. But, alright, once again on Thursday Night Football, the Cowboys are playing at Minnesota. It could be this could maybe be where the Cowboys finally lose again. But I'm not counting on it. So, Vikings may lose here, 6-6. At Jacksonville, maybe they win that, 7-6. Colts at the Vikings. Colts might be desperate. I don't know. Flip a coin there. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They go 8-6 then at that point. Because then the next week they have to go to Green Bay. Big situation for the Packers. Revenge and a desperate Packers team. Packers win that. That puts the Vikings at 8-7, and then the Bears at the Vikings. Alright, so at best, the Vikings finish 9-7. And even if they finish 9-7, the Eagles have a tiebreaker over them. If they finish 9-7, that is. The Eagles got to do their job. That's about... Well, let's look at the Packers. We can't rule them out because... Who knows? Maybe this win against the Eagles was the start of one of those late season strong finishes by the Packers. Wouldn't be the first time. In fact, the season they won the Super Bowl with their 2010 season, beat the Eagles in the wild card round of the playoffs. The Packers rattled off 5 straight wins late in the season or something like that. They weren't doing so hot, and then they just rattled off a bunch of wins at the end, finished 10-6, and would go on to win the Super Bowl that year. So here's the Packers. They're 5-6 right now. Texans at Packers. That's a tough game. I gotta say, that is a tough game. But it's winnable for the Packers. And then the Seahawks at the Packers. Seahawks not as good in the road as we just witnessed against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Packers at the Bears, they should win that. Vikings, they should win that. Packers at the Lions. So, I was under the impression their schedule was easier coming down the stretch. So their season's not a cakewalk the rest of the way. Let's look at it that way. And I don't know what to make of the Packers. I mean, that defense, again, the Eagles made their defense look pretty good, but it looks like there's perhaps 2 losses, maybe 3, and well, I don't know. I mean, they could lose against the Lions, and then obviously they could against the Texans or the Seahawks, but they probably wouldn't lose all 3. So, but I do see maybe 2 losses in there. So, I don't know. That's pretty tough for the Packers. So, might be looking at an 8-8 finish for the Packers. So that's basically what we got. Suddenly, the Packers have a slight bit more of life than they did before. And meanwhile, the Buccaneers have kind of crept into the mix. The Falcons, of course, are leading that division at 7-4. They're coming off of a bye this week. And, who knows? Maybe, you never know how it could turn out. Maybe the Buccaneers could actually win that division, depending if the Falcons kind of give it up. But we'll just have to wait and see. The Eagles have a win over the Falcons. So if the Falcons were to finish 9-7, then the Eagles would have the advantage there. But then again, I could just be wasting time talking about this right now. Because the Eagles have to finish 9-7. That's it. They lose against the Bengals this week, then it's season over. No more playoffs. And then we're just, I guess, in evaluation mode. And for that matter, call-out mode. The rest of the season here. So that's what we got. I'm not feeling optimistic. And unfortunately this week, if they beat the Bengals, it's just like, well, they're expected to beat the Bengals. They should beat the Bengals. So, even if they win, it's kind of like, woohoo, they beat the Bengals, who are reeling at this point and are 3-7-1 and basically, have no chance to do anything this year, obviously. So, that's where we're at right now. So we'll talk about that Bengals game next week with the Philadelphia Eagles, and if the Eagles lose that, then oh boy, then it's really gonna be a one for the ages here on the Tyler Werner Show next week. If that be the case,
Go ahead, make my day.
There will be shots fired, right here in the Tyler Werner Show. But we'll get there when we get there. We'll see what happens. Till then, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the Tyler Werner Show, and we'll talk to you next week.